Hello, so this is the next stage of the Master Grade Gundam Strike Freedom from Gundam Seed. I'm painting the model and I'm done with the hand painting part of the inner frame. So all these parts that I painted, first primed with black and then hand painted with metal, they now look like metal. And the next stage is to airbrush the armor panels, and they look like this. They're mostly white. I do this in the several stages, and that follows so-called pre-shading technique. I prime everything black and then use the pure white color to paint, to airbrush the areas in the middle of the armor panels, and that creates a highlight area. I do this for all color panels, both the white and the blue and even some of the red ones. I let it dry and then airbrush on top the actual color of the armor. So in case of these white panels, for example, I use the off-white. I spray that over, and what it creates is this shading effect. Some of the black priming color and the white highlight, they are still visible through this semi-transparent main color of the armor panels. This subtle, it's relatively subtle effect, this gradation of color from the darker edges of each metal panel to the center, that creates the illusion of a 3D form. And it's an interesting thing. It has to do with the scale of the model. You might think that since this is already a 3D plastic figurine, then there is no need to shade it to create the light and dark areas with paint, but that actually is not the case, because the model is very small and the adjacent surfaces reflect light on each other. And if we don't paint it, or if we paint everything with the same shade, then somehow subconsciously or somewhere in the background, our brain will process this as being a small scale model when we look at it. And there are many aspects. I'm learning all this scaled modeling stuff, and the things that I discover is that we process things visually differently depending on whether we look at the model in reality in 3D, let's say when it's standing on the shelf, or when it's photographed, for example, and if it's a really high-res close-up photo. The effects are different. So for example, if there are scratches on the surface, the scratches on the surface of the paint, and the actual machine is like 10 stories high, you cannot actually paint that to scale. In the 1 to 100 scale, the paint scratches would be so minuscule, they would not be visible, certainly not from across the room when the model is standing on the shelf. You could probably see them if you're able to achieve that resolution with your brush. You could see the small details in a photograph, but not really in reality. And I'm following some people online on YouTube who are kind of trying to do both things. So we're trying to balance the visual appeal of the model that's present in the 3D reality, so I want to be able to display it just on the shelf, but also I'm documenting this process and posting photos online and including them in videos, and that I want that to look good as well. So it's a tricky thing, not necessarily 100% realistic, right? So when we talk about the photorealistic art or the miniature models, it's a somewhat difficult thing to achieve. So there is a balance depending on what medium the model or the image is going to be presented in. So that's what I'm learning. And again, I wanted to say that this process, for example, the pre-shading, things like that, this is one of the many ways of custom paint the plastic model. The YouTube search would reveal hundreds of excellent techniques. And even with this one, I find this one is fairly interesting because you don't see the final result until it's revealed, and I find that exciting. But even with that, I'm making many mistakes as I go through, so this is by no means a tutorial. It's just the notes, mostly for myself, for future reference, for building new things. So again, that stage is just airbrushing right now, getting color on all the separate pieces of the model that's been disassembled, and then next I'm going to put it back together before applying decals and weathering. So that is kind of exciting. So everything is taken apart, but everything is at least painted now, and it's a cool stage. I'm looking forward to seeing the whole mobile suit back together again.